The morning on Orbital Station Helios was quiet, except for the soft hum of engines and the distant echo of footsteps in the training wing. Inside the largest battle simulator chamber, a group of cadets sat in the observation deck, waiting for the next exercise to begin. The transparent walls of the deck overlooked the arena below, a vast metallic space filled with pillars, low walls, and narrow corridors. The challenge was famous in the Terran Defense Academy. It was called Scenario 6-1-6 Combat. Drones against one human trainee. The rules were simple: survive for 10 minutes. The drones were faster, stronger, and perfectly coordinated. No cadet had ever finished the full timer without taking a hit. Most didn't last more than 3 minutes. Today, the one stepping into the arena was Cadet Mira. She was younger than most of the trainees, her build smaller, her face calm but unreadable. Some cadets whispered that she wasn't ready for this level of training. Others said she was too lucky for her own good. The truth was, very few people actually knew her well. From the deck above, Instructor Hale watched her closely. He was a tall man with silver streaks in his hair, a former frontline officer who had faced real battles against alien raiders. His voice came over the arena speakers. Cadet Mira, 6 drones. 10 minutes. Scenario 6-1 begins on my mark. Are you ready? Mira gave a small nod. She adjusted the light armor strapped over her uniform. It was standard simulator gear, enough to register hits, not enough to protect from mistakes. Her training pistol rested at her hip. It didn't fire real bullets, but in the simulation, every shot counted as if it did. The arena lights dimmed, and the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The 6 drones activated. Their eyes glowed with a cold blue light. They fanned out instantly. 3 taking the high ground on metal walkways, 3 rushing forward along the floor. The sound of their metal steps echoed sharply. Mira didn't draw her pistol right away. Instead, she moved left, staying close to a line of steel pillars. She kept her head low, eyes scanning the movement above and ahead. The drones fired bursts of simulation rounds, bright streaks of light crossing the air. Mira slipped between 2 pillars, the shots missing by inches. From the observation deck, Cadet Rowan whispered to the person beside him, "She's not even firing back. She's just running." The other cadet smirked. "Won't last a minute." But Instructor Hale's gaze narrowed. He'd seen this kind of movement before. Not aimless running, but calculated positioning. Mira darted into a narrow corridor on the left side of the arena. 1 drone followed, its heavy frame scraping against the walls. Its speed slowed. Mira used the extra seconds to slide behind a low barricade. The drone's targeting system tried to adjust, but she was already gone. Slipping out the other end of the corridor, the drones regrouped quickly on the high walkways. 2 aimed down and tried to trap her between them. Mira's eyes flicked up. The metal above was old, with rust along the support joints. She didn't need to bring them down, only to pass under at the right time. She zigzagged across open space, forcing the drones to fire at different angles. 2 of their shots clashed against each other in midair, a rare occurrence, but enough to give her a 2-second window to vanish behind another pillar. Up in the deck, Instructor Hale folded his arms. "She's mapping the arena in her head," he murmured. Minute 3 began. The drones were now in full pursuit. Their footsteps echoed like a drumbeat, getting faster, closing in. Mira's breathing was steady, not the panic gasps of someone running for survival, but the measured rhythm of someone pacing themselves for the long game. She took her first shot then, not at a drone, but at a wall panel near the floor. The panel sparked in the simulation, triggering a momentary flash of smoke. 1 drone stumbled into the haze, its sensors blinded for half a second. Mira slid past it without even looking back. In the observation deck, Cadet Rowan sat up straighter. "Wait, she did that on purpose." The other cadet frowned. "She's buying time." Rowan shook his head slowly. "No, she's learning them." By minute 5, the drones had tried 3 coordinated traps, and each time Mira found a gap. She didn't waste energy on constant shooting. Every move she made was deliberate, ducking behind a barrier at the last possible moment, sliding across the floor to avoid incoming fire, or luring a drone into a spot where its angle of attack was too narrow. One drone tried to leap down from a walkway to cut her off. Mira shifted left at the last instant, letting the drone land hard on the floor beside her. She didn't fire. She didn't have to. The impact slowed it just enough for her to be out of reach before it could recover. By minute 7, the crowd's tone had shifted. The whispers were no longer mocking. Cadet Rowan leaned forward, his voice almost excited. "She's making them waste their shots." Instructor Hale said nothing, but the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, the closest thing he gave to a smile during training. In the arena, Mira glanced at the large timer above the exit door. 2 minutes 41 seconds left. She took cover behind a half-collapsed barrier. The sound of drones approaching from two sides. She crouched low, her pistol resting loosely in her hand. The drones moved closer, their blue eyes scanning. Mira's mind was already 3 steps ahead. She could see the pattern, how they moved in perfect sync, how they relied on each other's positioning. If she could disrupt that, even for a second, the rest of the match would be hers. But for now, she stayed still. Waiting. Listening to the rhythm of metal footsteps closing in. The timer ticked down, and Mira's eyes sharpened. The real game was about to begin. The timer above the arena door showed 2 minutes 30 seconds left. The crowd in the observation deck leaned closer to the glass, expecting the final rush. Most cadets who reached this point usually made a desperate run for the last seconds, firing wildly. But Mira stayed still, crouched behind a barrier, her breathing even. The 6 drones moved like hunters closing in on trapped prey. Their footsteps echoed sharply in the metal chamber, to approach from the left quarter, to from the right, and to remain on the walkways above. Their formation was perfect, no gaps, no blind spots, but Mira had been watching them since the first second of the match, when she peeked from behind the barrier. Her eyes didn't just see 6 machines, she saw a pattern. The front units always turned a split second after the lead drone shifted. The ones on the walkways never fired unless the lead gave a clear opening. They were precise, almost too precise. Mira's mind worked quickly. They're not thinking, they're following. She waited until the 2 from the left quarter were about to step into firing range. Then she moved. Instead of running away, she darted toward them. The crowd gasped. The drones instantly adjusted their aim, but Mira slid on one knee, passing under a low pipe. A bright streak of simulated gunfire hit the wall behind her. Before the drones could pivot, she rolled behind a tall pillar. Their sensors recalculated, sending a signal to the others. And that was the moment Mira wanted. The drones on the walkway above had already shifted their aim, but they were aiming at the spot she had been, not where she was now. The half-second delay told her everything. Up in the observation deck, Instructor Hale muttered under his breath, "She's not running anymore. She's testing them." Cadet Rowan grinned. "She's reading their playbook." The drones advanced again, their steps in perfect rhythm. Mira pulled out her pistol for the first time. She aimed not at them, but at a loose panel high on the wall. Bang. The simulation registered the hit. The panel fell, clattering loudly to the ground. One of the drones paused, its sensors flashing as it processed the unexpected noise. The pause was tiny, barely half a second, but it broke the flow of their advance. Mira moved into that opening. She sprinted past the distracted drone, sliding into the narrow service tunnel on the far side of the arena. It was a cramped, dark space with low lighting. The drones couldn't all follow at once, only one could fit at a time. From the observation deck, the other cadets leaned forward, realizing what she was doing. She's splitting them up. Inside the tunnel, Mira slowed her pace, letting the first drone close in just enough to commit to the chase. She turned a corner sharply, stepping aside at the last instant. The heavy drone tried to follow, but clipped the wall, scraping its metal plating. Sparks flashed. Mira didn't waste bullets. She just kept moving, letting the narrow space work against her pursuer. By the time she exited the tunnel, she was back in open ground. But now only 5 drones had line of sight on her. The 6th was still stuck inside. The timer ticked to 1 minute 50 seconds. The remaining drones tried to close. And again, Mira noticed something else this time. Whenever the lead drone fired, the others adjusted their aim after it. It was subtle, but enough for her to plan her next move. She took cover behind a low barricade and leaned out just enough to show herself, predictably. The lead drone fired first. Mira ducked instantly, and two of the supporting drone's shots hit the barricade where her head had been. Predictable, she thought, from above. Instructor Hale finally allowed himself a small nod. She's turning the fight into a chess game. With one deep breath, Mira made her next move. She ran diagonally across the arena floor, not away from the drones, but between them. Their shots came fast, but she zigzagged, forcing them to fire at awkward angles. One shot from the walkway hit another drone's shoulder. The machines didn't feel pain, but the impact made it stumble for a second. The crowd reacted with a mix of surprise and excitement. Did she just make them hit each other? I think she did. Mira reached the far corner of the arena, pressing her back to the wall. From here, she had a clear view of the lead drone and could watch the exact moment it signaled its squad. Her eyes followed the subtle tilt of its head, the precise way it stepped before firing. You're the brain. Take you out. The rest will falter. The timer showed 1 minute 15 seconds. Mira had time for one risky play. She peeked out just enough to bait the lead drone into shooting. As soon as it moved, she sprinted forward, closing the distance in seconds. The lead drone adjusted, trying to track her, but she slid to the left, firing to quick shots at the ground near its legs. The simulation registered damage to its mobility. The lead drone slowed, its signals becoming delayed. The others hesitated just for a fraction of a second, but in that hesitation, their perfect formation collapsed. From the deck, Cadet Rowan couldn't help whispering, "She just broke them." Mira didn't celebrate. She knew the fight wasn't over. The remaining drones still outnumbered her, but now they were acting without flawless coordination. Their timing was off, their movements less efficient. With 45 seconds left, she moved in controlled bursts, never staying in one spot for more than 2 seconds. Each time she changed direction, the drones had to reorient themselves individually instead of as one. One drone tried to cut her off, but without the lead's instant guidance, it misjudged the angle. Mira slid past, tapping the side of its sensor with the barrel of her pistol. The simulation counted it as a close hit, disabling the drone. Now it was 5 against 1. The final seconds ticked down. Mira kept her pace steady, weaving through pillars, forcing the drones to waste shots and block each other's line of fire. When the buzzer finally sounded, Mira was still standing in the center of the arena, untouched. The drones froze in place, their blue eyes dimming as the simulation shut them down. From above, the cadets erupted into shouts and applause. Instructor Hale's voice came over the speaker. "Calm but firm. Well done, Cadet Mira. You survived your first engagement." Mira only gave a small nod in response. Inside her mind, she wasn't thinking about the cheers or the record she'd just set. She was thinking about the next round, the moment when survival would not be enough, and she'd have to fight back for real. The arena lights dimmed for a moment as the simulation reset for round 2. Mira stood in the center, helmet tucked under one arm, her expression calm. The 6 drones powered back on, their blue eyes glowing again. Above the arena, the cadets in the observation deck leaned against the glass, their excitement from the last round still buzzing in the air. Instructor Hale's voice came through the speaker. "Cadet Mira, this time, you will not simply survive. Disable as many drones as possible in 10 minutes. The scenario has been adjusted. They will adapt faster." Mira's lips pressed into a thin line. She knew what that meant. The perfect pattern she had seen before might shift. But there was one thing she also knew. Machines could learn. But they learned in straight lines. Humans didn't. The buzzer sounded. The drones moved, and immediately, no hesitation, their footsteps ringing out in metallic echoes. The lead drone stepped forward as before, but now its head turned faster, scanning wider angles. Mira noticed it, but didn't panic. She had been watching their every move in the first round, memorizing the tiny delays, the way they relied on the leader's position to decide their own. Instead of backing away, she took 3 quick steps to the left, drawing their attention toward a cluster of steel crates. The 2 nearest drones aimed their weapons. The blue targeting lights danced along the walls as they prepared to fire. And that was when Mira darted in the opposite direction, from the observation deck. Cadet Rowan leaned forward. She's testing them again. The first volley of shots hit empty space, striking the crates where she had been a heartbeat ago. Mira used the moment to sprint toward the far walkway stairs. She didn't climb them. Instead, she stopped halfway, crouched low, and peeked through the gaps between the steps. Through that narrow view, she saw it, the leader sending quick head tilts and foot movements, tiny signals that told the other drones where to move. They were still coordinated, but now the signals were shorter, sharper. Meant to reduce her reaction time. So you've sped up, she thought, but you're still predictable. The 2 drones on the walkway moved to flank her. She slid down the stairs. Before they could trap her, landing silently, the lead drone shifted again, sending a burst of signals. The others reacted instantly. That was when Mira's mind clicked the pattern into place. Every time the lead drone spotted her, there was a sequence: 1 footstep, head tilt, micropause. Then the squad fired in unison. It was almost invisible. But not to her. In a real battle, this would have been a weakness, and she was about to use it. She dashed toward the center of the arena. The drones followed, their formation tight. The leader's head tilted, 1 foot shifted forward. And Mira moved before the pause was even complete. She slid behind a pillar, and the incoming shots struck another drone that had been crossing its line of fire. In the deck above, several cadets gasped. She made them hit their own again. Instructor Hale kept his arms folded, but there was a flicker of pride in his eyes. Not luck, timing. Mira kept moving, circling the arena, forcing the drones to adjust again and again. Each time she saw the leader begin the sequence, she would shift position just enough so that the squad's aim went slightly off. On the 4th attempt, she got close enough to take a shot at the leader's leg. Her pistol cracked once, the simulation marking the hit with a flash of red. The leader stumbled, its movement speed dropping. The rest of the drones reacted late. Their signals were delayed without the perfect timing of the lead. The formation broke. Mira didn't waste the opportunity. She ran straight at one of the flank drones, sliding under its firing arc, tapping its side with her pistol barrel. The system registered it as a close hit, disabling the drone. Now it was 5 against 1. The timer showed 7 minutes 40 seconds left. Plenty of time. The remaining drones began moving independently, but without the lead's exact coordination, they weren't as efficient. They got in each other's way, crossing lines of fire, blocking angles. Mira moved through the chaos like water through cracks, always a step ahead. Another opportunity came when the drones tried to corner her at the base of a staircase. She pretended to retreat, then suddenly spun sideways, making one of them overshoot the turn. The other fired, hitting its partner instead. The disabled drone fell with a loud clang. For left, up above, Cadet Rowan whispered to his neighbor, "She's not stronger than them. She's making them fight each other." Mira kept her breathing steady, not letting the small victories distract her. The leader was still functioning, though slower. And as long as it was active, the remaining drones could still regain some order. She ducked behind another pillar, listening to their movements. The sound of their steps told her their distance, one approaching from the right, 2 from the left, and the leader in the center. When the leader came into view, she acted fast. She dashed out, fired 2 shots at its chest, and rolled behind. Cover again. The red flash marked both hits. The leader staggered, then went still, the simulation confirming it as disabled. The rest of the drones froze for half a second, their systems recalculating without central guidance. Mira didn't give them time. She moved fast, weaving between them, forcing close engagements where her smaller frame gave her an advantage. One by one, she tapped each drone's sensor point, disabling them without wasting shots. When the last drone's blue eyes dimmed, the arena fell silent except for Mira's light footsteps. The timer still showed 3 minutes 15 seconds remaining. From above, the cadets erupted into applause, the sound echoing off the metal walls. Instructor Hale's voice came over the comms, calm as ever. Cadet Mira, all hostiles disabled. Exercise complete. Mira straightened, her breathing steady. She didn't look up at the crowd. She simply holstered her pistol and walked toward the exit, already thinking about the next challenge, because she knew this wasn't the real fight. The real fight would come when the enemy wasn't made of circuits and programming, and she would need every lesson she'd just learned. The air inside the arena was still heavy with the sound of the last battle's echoes. The metal floor showed scuff marks where drones had stumbled or fallen. Mira stood in the center again, helmet on, pistol loaded with a fresh magazine of simulation rounds. Instructor Hale's voice carried over the speakers. New scenario. Drones have upgraded targeting and improved reaction speed. Objective: disable as many as possible. They will begin at maximum coordination. In the observation deck, the cadets were buzzing. Some whispered that Mira wouldn't last this time. Others argued that she'd already proved herself. But everyone was curious. They had seen her survive. They had seen her disable. Now they wanted to see if she could win under harsher rules. The buzzer sounded. The 6 drones activated instantly, their blue eyes glowing brighter than before. This time, they didn't take a moment to scan. They rushed forward in a tightly packed wedge formation, moving with perfect synchronization. Mira didn't run. Instead, she stepped sideways, moving at an angle that looked almost careless. The drones turned to follow, still holding formation. From above, Cadet Rowan frowned. She's letting them get close. Why? Mira's eyes stayed fixed on the lead drone, reading its movements. It was faster now, sharper in its signals. But even with the upgrade, the others still relied on it for direction. That was the chain she needed to break. The wedge formation tightened, pushing her toward the left corner of the arena. She moved just enough to keep the gap between them constant, letting them think they were hurting her. When she reached the corner, she turned sharply, not to escape, but to face them. The lead drone immediately raised its weapon. The others followed, their guns locking on target. Mira took 2 quick steps forward, lowering her body so she was harder to hit. She aimed not at the leader, but at a steel plate bolted to the floor just in front of it. Bang. The shot struck the plate, sending a simulated spark and flash upward. The leader hesitated for a fraction of a second. Its sensors were calculating. The 2 drones directly behind it had already begun firing, but the hesitation shifted their timing. The result: their shot struck the leader in the back. The simulation registered the hits. The leader's blue eyes dimmed, and its movement froze. From the deck above, gasps and shouts broke out. She just made them take out their own commander. The remaining 5 drones faltered for barely a second, but for Mira, that was enough. She sprinted forward, weaving between them. The sudden change in position forced the drones to turn their weapons awkwardly, giving her narrow openings. She aimed at the ground near the second drone's feet. The simulation flash blinded its sensors briefly, and before it could recover, Mira was behind it, tapping its sensor plate with her pistol barrel. Another disabled signal flashed red. Now it was for against 1. The cadets above were on their feet, following her every move. Instructor Hale's voice remained calm. She's using the arena against them. Every object is a tool. The 4 remaining drones tried to spread out, forcing her toward open ground. But Mira didn't give them the chance. She ducked between 2 tall pillars, moving quickly enough that the drones had to line up single file to follow. In a narrow space, only one could aim properly. Mira stopped suddenly, crouching low so the second in line fired directly into the first. The friendly fire disabled the first drone instantly. 3 left. Mira didn't waste a second. She rolled sideways, coming up in a crouch behind a small barricade. The remaining drones split up, circling to her left, one moving right. She knew they were trying to trap her. She also knew they still didn't fully adapt without the leader's instant commands. She pretended to aim at the drone on the right, exposing just enough of herself for it to prepare a shot. As it did, She suddenly sprinted toward the two on the left, closing the distance before they could realign their aim. One of them fired too early, hitting its partner. The simulation marked another disabled unit, 2 left. By now, the crowd in the observation deck was buzzing with energy. Cadet Rowan grinned, shaking his head. She's not fighting them, she's making them fight each other. The last two drones tried to coordinate an attack without their leader. Their movements were slightly out of sync, their firing windows too wide. Mira moved in a zigzag pattern, closing the distance. At the last moment, she slid low between them, twisting her body to tap both sensor plates with her pistol in one smooth motion. The arena flashed twice, confirming both as disabled. Silence fell for a moment, then the crowd erupted in cheers. The timer still showed for minutes 10 seconds remaining. Mira stood in the middle of the arena, lowering her pistol. She wasn't smiling, but her eyes were sharp. She'd proven she could survive. She'd proven she could win. Up above, Instructor Hale finally spoke, his voice steady, but with a note of approval. Cadet Mira, exercise complete. All hostiles disabled, efficient. Work. Mira nodded once, stepping toward the exit. She didn't wave to the crowd or soak in the attention. She was already thinking about the next challenge, because the more she succeeded, the more the Academy would push her. And deep down, she knew that someday, the real enemy would be faster, stronger, and smarter than these machines. When that day came, she'd need every skill, every tactic, every scrap of adaptability she had. For now, though, she had walked away once again without a scratch. The arena floor shimmered with faint heat as the next scenario loaded. The metal pillars and walls shifted, rearranging into a new layout. Now the space looked like a maze, twisting corridors, sharp turns, and hidden corners. Mira stood still in the center, scanning the new terrain. This setup was different from the open arenas before. Here, the lines of sight were short, and narrow passages made it easy to disappear. It was an advantage she planned to use. Instructor Hale's voice echoed through the chamber. New objective: 6 drones. Survive and disable as many as possible. They will start from different positions and hunt as a group. This meant she wouldn't see them all at once. They could attack from any direction. The buzzer sounded. Mira moved immediately, slipping into the left quarter. Her steps were light, her head turning quickly to check every corner. The arena walls were tall, cutting off the view of the observation deck above. She couldn't see the cadets now, but she could feel their attention on her every move. The sound of metal footsteps echoed faintly, then split into different directions. The drones were spreading out, closing in from multiple sides. She reached a narrow choke point where the corridor turned sharply to the right. There, she stopped, pressed her back to the wall, and waited. Her breathing slowed until it matched the quiet hum of the arena. The first drone rounded the corner at full speed. Before it could aim, Mira stepped forward, low and quick, aiming at the floor just under its legs. The simulated spark flashed, disorienting its sensors. She slipped past it in a blur, tapping its sensor plate with her pistol. A red flash confirmed the disabled. One down. The footsteps behind her grew louder. Another drone was coming from the same path. Mira didn't stay to fight. Instead, she darted into the next corridor, using the tight turns to break line of sight from above. Cadet Rowan whispered, "She's not just attacking. She's pulling them into the maze." The second drone reached the corner, scanning quickly. But by the time it adjusted its aim, Mira was gone. She had already circled to the right, moving toward the sound of another set of footsteps ahead. Two drones appeared from opposite ends of a hallway, moving in perfect sync. It should have been a trap, but the space between them was narrow. Mira ran toward the one on the left, ducking just before it fired. The shot streaked past her and struck the drone behind her instead. The simulation registered the hit, and the rear drone's eyes dimmed. Now it was for against one. She didn't slow down. She sprinted deeper into the maze, her footsteps echoing just enough to keep the drones guessing. She knew they were tracking her, but in the tight corridors, they couldn't attack as a group. One corner ahead opened into a wider chamber. Mira stepped into the middle, letting herself be seen. The move was deliberate, bait. Two drones entered from different sides, rushing toward her. She waited until the last possible moment, then dove into a side passage. The drones, unable to stop their momentum, crashed into each other. Sparks burst from their frames as the simulation marked them both as temporarily disabled. The cadets in the deck above cheered, their voices faint through the high walls. 3 left. Mira took a moment to check the timer. 4 minutes 15 seconds, plenty of time, but she didn't relax. The remaining drones would be faster now, their systems adapting to her movements. She heard one approaching from ahead and another from behind. Instead of running, she slipped into a shadowed alcove beside the quarter and crouched low. The front drone passed without noticing her. Mira stepped out silently and tapped its sensor plate. The red flash lit the narrow hallway for a moment, then faded. 2 left. She knew they'd be cautious now. Machines didn't panic, but they adjusted without the others. The last 2 would try to flank her. The maze twisted again into an open central area. Mira entered slowly, pistol ready. She listened, faint metallic taps to the left. A steady rhythm to the right. She moved toward the right sound, keeping her footsteps as quiet as possible. The drone appeared at the far end, scanning. Mira didn't attack immediately. Instead, she stepped into view for just a second, then vanished behind a pillar. Predictably, the drone moved toward her position. That was when she heard the left side footsteps getting closer. The second drone was coming in. She timed her movement carefully. Just as both drones reached the center, she sprinted across the open floor, forcing them to adjust aim toward her at the same time. They fired, but their shots crossed paths. One took a direct hit and collapsed, the red disable light flashing. 1 left. Mira faced the final drone in the open space. It was faster, its aim sharper than the others. It fired quickly, forcing her to roll behind a fallen barrier. The sound of metal hitting metal rang out as shots struck the cover. She waited, counting the rhythm of its fire. Then, on the pause between shots, she rose, fired once, and hit its sensor plate dead center. The blue light in its eyes faded to black. Silence. The timer still showed 1 minute 50 seconds. From above, the deck exploded with cheers. Cadet Rowan grinned. That's not luck. She's controlling the whole fight. Instructor Hale's voice came over the speakers. Calm but firm. Cadet Mira, all targets disabled. You have turned the tide. Mira holstered her pistol and walked toward the exit. She didn't wave, didn't slow, didn't celebrate. Her mind was already on the next step, because every victory in training meant the academy would only make the next challenge harder, and she was ready for it. The arena was quiet now, except for the hum of the last drone. All the others were disabled. Lying in twisted metal heaps around the simulation room, sparks flickered from their broken parts. But they were no longer a threat. Mira stood near the center, breathing slowly. Sweat slid down her forehead, but her hands were steady. She knew the hardest part was still ahead. The last drone was different from the others. It was smaller, faster, and smarter. It had been watching her fight the others. It had learned. On the observation deck above, the instructors leaned forward. The trainees watching held their breath. This was the moment when most cadets failed. The drone suddenly shot forward with a burst of speed. It moved like a shadow, its silver body almost blurring. Mira stepped aside, just in time to feel a rush of air as it passed. She didn't fire her weapon. Not yet. Instead, she watched. She needed to know exactly how it moved. The drone circled her, keeping its sensors locked on her position. Its movements were sharp and unpredictable, zigzagging left and right, trying to confuse her aim. Mira remembered the earlier drones. They had patterns. But this one felt almost alive. The drone lunged again, firing a quick burst of energy bolts. Mira slid behind a steel barrier, the shots leaving bright scorch marks on the wall. She counted in her head. The drone fired in short bursts, then paused for a moment before moving again. That pause might be her only chance, but rushing it would be dangerous. It was waiting for her to make a mistake. Mira took a slow step to the right, then another. The drone followed, its optical sensors tracking her every move. She knew she couldn't beat it with speed. It was faster than she was. She couldn't beat it with strength. Its armor was thicker than hers. She had to outthink it. Her eyes flicked to the far side of the arena. There, along the wall, was a heavy blast door. It was part of the simulation's safety system, designed to close if an area was compromised during battle. She remembered from training that the doors could be triggered manually from inside. The arena, if you were quick enough, an idea formed. It was risky, but it could work. She began moving toward the blast door, pretending to stumble. The drone reacted instantly, rushing in to take advantage of her mistake. At the last second, she rolled to the side, just as the drone passed the activation panel. She slapped her hand against it. With a deep mechanical rumble, the blast door started sliding down from the ceiling. The drone turned sharply. Realizing too late what was happening, Mira fired a single, precise shot at the floor just in front of the drone. The explosion of sparks made it flinch backward, just far enough that the heavy door slammed shut between them. The timer on the simulation wall hit 0. The arena's lights brightened. The sound of the drone systems powering down filled the space. Mira lowered her weapon, her breathing steady again. She was still standing. She hadn't taken a single hit. Up in the observation deck, the instructors looked at each other. One of them smiled faintly. Another shook their head in disbelief. In the rows behind them, the other cadets started murmuring. Some were amazed. Some looked frustrated. A few were already replaying her moves in their minds, trying to understand how she had done it. The simulation door opened, and Mira stepped out into the bright corridor beyond. She could feel the eyes of every person in the room following her. One instructor stopped her as she passed. "How did you know that would work?" they asked. Mira shrugged lightly. "I didn't know. I just tried something it wouldn't expect." The instructor tilted their head, as if considering her answer. Then they nodded slowly. "That," they said, "is why you won." In the quiet that followed, Mira returned to her seat among the other cadets. A few congratulated her. Most stayed silent, still processing what they had seen. But Mira wasn't thinking about their reactions. She was thinking about the lesson she had learned, not from the instructors, but from the fight itself. Machines were strong, fast, and precise. But they were still trapped by their own programming. They could only react to what they knew. Humans could change. They could adapt in the middle of a fight. They could do something completely unexpected, even if it didn't make sense. At first, that was what kept her alive today. Later, as she left the simulation hall, Mira glanced back once at the now empty arena. The broken drone still lay scattered inside. She thought about how many cadets had stood where she did and lost. She thought about how close she had come to losing herself. But she hadn't. She smiled faintly and walked away. Somewhere deep in the Academy's training systems, a small note was added to the simulation records. Cadet Mira, simulation record. Perfect survival to 0% damage taken. It was the first perfect score in years. The twin suns of Varathus rose slowly over the crystal towers of the capital city, casting a golden light across the grand palace. The great hall was silent, except for the steady footsteps of Queen Melora as she walked toward the council chamber. Her robe, woven with silver threads and deep blue silk, whispered against the marble floor. Her crown, shaped like the wings of the ancient sky beasts, glimmered faintly in the morning light. Every step she took felt heavy, not because of her crown, but because of the words she knew she would soon speak, words that would change her life forever. The council was already gathered when she entered. 12 elders, each wearing the long gray cloak of their office, sat in a circle. Their eyes followed her, sharp and unreadable. In the center of the room, a single chair awaited her, a symbol of both power and judgment. "Queen Melora," spoke Elder Theron, the oldest among them, his voice deep and measured. "We are told you have called us here for a matter of great importance." Melora stopped before them and looked into each of their faces. She saw pride, suspicion, and most of all expectation. For months they had been pressuring her to choose a mate from among the noble families of Varathus. It was the way of their people, the way it had always been. But Melora had made her choice. "I have found the one I wish to share my life with," she said, her voice calm but firm. "He is not of Verathis. He is human." A ripple of shock passed through the room. The elders leaned forward, their voices rising. "A human?" Elder Corvin, a man with sharp eyes and a colder heart, almost, spat the word. "A being from the outer worlds, Queen Melora. This is unthinkable." "It is not unthinkable," she replied, meeting his gaze. "It is real. His name is Darren. He came here on a trade mission 2 years ago. I have known him, spoken with him, and seen the truth in his heart. I love him." The word love hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, ready to shatter. Elder Theron shook his head slowly. "Your Majesty, you are the guardian of Verathis tradition. Our people do not join with outsiders. The bloodline of our queens has remained pure for 1,000 years. Melora's voice grew stronger. "Tradition is not a prison. The strength of Verathis is not in the purity of blood, but in the wisdom of its choices. Darren has shown more honor, kindness, and courage than many who sit in this room." The chamber erupted in whispers. Some of the younger counselors looked uncertain, but most wore expressions of anger or disbelief. "You risk everything," Corvin said sharply. "Our alliances, our customs, our pride. If you do this, you will lose the trust of your people. You will be remembered not as a queen, but as a traitor to your own kind." Melora's hands trembled, but she held her head high. "I am willing to bear that if it means I can live truthfully." There was a long, heavy silence. Then Elder Theron spoke, his tone heavy with finality. "If you continue on this path, we will have no choice but to strip you of your title. You will leave the palace. You will no longer rule Verathis." Melora took a deep breath. The walls of the chamber seemed to close in on her, the cold judgment of the elders pressing down like a weight. She thought of Darren, his warm smile, his steady hands, the way he listened to her not as a queen, but as a person. She thought of the life they might build together, far from the politics and shadows of the throne. "I understand," she said softly, "and still, I choose him." The words were like the final strike of a bell, clear, irrevocable. The elders stood. One by one, they turned their backs to her. The ceremonial gesture was as cold as ice. The crown upon her head suddenly felt like nothing more than metal and stone. Within the hour, her belongings were packed. She was not dragged from the palace, no. Such things were not done openly on Verathis, but the meaning was the same. She walked through the great gates for the last time, her guards keeping a respectful distance. The people watched from the streets, murmuring in confusion. Some looked away. Some whispered her name with pity. Others simply stared, as if trying to understand how Queen could walk away from her throne. Waiting for her beyond the gates was Darren. His dark hair was tousled from the morning wind. His eyes filled with both relief and worry. When she reached him, he took her hand without hesitation. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. "I am no longer Queen of Verathis, but I am still myself. And I am with you." They boarded a small starship, its silver hull gleaming faintly in the light of the twin suns. As the engines roared to life, Melora glanced one last time at the palace towers rising in the distance. She had been born within those walls, trained from childhood to rule, to protect the honor of her people, and yet she felt no regret, for the first time in years, her heart felt light. The ship lifted into the skies, leaving the city behind. Below them, the rivers shimmered like threads of silver, the forests spread like green oceans. She wondered if she would ever see them again. Perhaps not, but the future was wide and full of possibility. Beside her, Darren looked out at the stars. With quiet determination, "We'll find a place," he said, "a home where we can live without fear." She nodded. "And someday, our people will understand. Perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but someday." The stars stretched before them, endless and bright. Melora reached for Darren's hand, holding it firmly. Whatever storms lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. Far behind, in the silent council chamber, Elder Corvin stood at the window, watching the small starship vanish into the black. His jaw tightened, The queen was gone, but the memory of her choice would linger like a shadow over Varathus, and somewhere deep within him, though he would never admit it, he wondered if she might be right.